And I'm joined by Acting Superintendent John George, who I've worked with in other capacities in the past as well. And Dr. George will make a few brief comments when I'm done, and then we'll be more than happy to take any questions that you have. I am here to provide an update on my department's real-time audit of the Harrisburg School District. Shortly after I announced the audit in June, the school district was placed into receivership, a move that I supported then and still do. Now, I want to be clear about the receivership move, and that is I've said publicly and privately and anywhere in between that I tend to be against that move in almost any circumstance. And even in a case like this, it's usually the least bad option, because it's always better when you have local control. But sometimes there are such extreme circumstances that it is critical to make such a move. And I did agree with the governor and the Department of Education when they made this move. It is now under the direction of Dr. Janet Samuels, who previously served as the Chief Recovery Officer. And let me start by saying that Dr. Samuels is doing yeoman's work to turn things around in the Harrisburg School District, and we all need to be very clear, and that is this is not going to be an overnight process. I applaud her for bringing in the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit number 23, which helped turn around the Reading School District by adopting many of my recommendations. And one thing I want to say about that situation, Dr. George was a critical part of that, which is one of the reasons why he's both here with me today and also, I'm sure, the acting superintendent. When I became Auditor General in 2013, January, our first major school district audit released that year was of Reading, and it was a financial disaster. And following that audit, there was a lot of action, and the district could have gone any number of ways. But by hiring a superintendent, Dr. Muneen, who actually was from Central York School District at the time, I think he was the assistant superintendent, building relationships with the teachers, the parents, the students, and the business community. Last year, when I released my follow-up audit of the Reading School District, it was the best financial turnaround in the history of Pennsylvania. And for those that don't know, Reading nationally has the second highest poverty rate in the country. So that financial turnaround was not easy. In fact, it was very hard, but it was done with a team-like atmosphere. And Dr. George and the intermediate unit in that region provided critical help during the transition for Dr. Muneen and even after he took over to help get that district on financial footing. So for the first time in a generation, there's hope in the Reading School District. And Acting Superintendent Dr. John George came in with a team of other very qualified professionals to help with Harrisburg, as he did in Reading. The new school year has started on a positive note with a renewed focus on putting students first. My team met with district officials twice this month, and the information they shared will be very helpful as we continue this audit. And I want to be clear about that because there were some issues in the past with the Department of Education and in previous audits on sharing information. The tone that has been set right away in this audit, is I will not accept anything other than full cooperation, but I want to be fair about this, and that is the new team in Harrisburg is being very forthcoming and very cooperative and has the right approach as we try to put the district back on track. There is still a lot of work to be done, and it will take some time to assess the actions taken by the district to correct past mismanagement. As always, I will share any pertinent findings with law enforcement agencies that reportedly are reviewing whether any laws were broken in the past. And we all know some of the news that broke yesterday. We have no information on that, but just as in the past, when we worked with the Attorney General in the Scranton School District, and we now know there's been some subsequent investigations there as a result of that audit and the good work by Attorney Generals Josh Shapiro, and even one recent guilty plea as a result of that work. So I am used to working with appropriate law enforcement agencies if laws have been broken, and this will be no different, assuming those media reports were accurate. The changes that have taken place in just a few short months since the Department of Education finished their work and we have begun ours are significant. They show that the district's new management team is committed to bringing about needed changes. Some of these important changes that we've witnessed during our real-time audit include more closely monitoring leave time, overtime, and payroll. This is one key to better managing district expenses. Reviewing the outsourced management contracts for food services and facilities. Ending the practice of providing travel advances and starting to require documentation of expenses, which I believe most people would agree is simply common sense. And importantly, there are now new controls involving the payment of invoices, including a review of all invoices by the Chief Financial Officer. My auditors are reviewing these policy changes to ensure they are working as intended, and we will provide an update when that is complete. We will start with a review. This is now where we are going from here. This is the next phase of our real-time audit. How invoices are reviewed and paid, and how travel is managed. And I want to be clear, as we do this, we're going to break this up into chunks, and then when we review that part of it, we'll come and outline what we found there, and then we'll go into our next dive of the audit. I want to remind everyone that although we live in an age of instant outrage, results take time. What I mean by that is, I know Liz is going to get mad, but all life being a sports analogy, when your team is losing 7-6 at halftime, or hypothetically, there might have been a team from Philadelphia that might have been losing at halftime to a team from Washington. If you would have read Twitter at halftime, every coach should get fired, the quarterback's a bum, and then 2 hours later, magically, everyone should get contract extensions, and they were all bound for the Hall of Fame. I only point that out to just say, watch sports Twitter for one game and you will see what I'm talking about, which is let's just calm down here and methodically work through what needs to happen here in Harrisburg, because it is going to take time. The Reading process took at least 4 years. And the reality is it never really ends, but you got to start somewhere. As the statement goes, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Now, there are going to be no easy solutions for problems that have been, let's be blunt, decades in the making. And I'll repeat what I said in June. Harrisburg students should not have to worry about whether the adults in charge of their education are acting in their best interests. I'm optimistic with new leadership in place and with continued monitoring by my office, the state and the district can work as partners, charting a stronger course for the future. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. George, who wants to make a brief statement, or it can be long, it's up to him, and then we'll take any questions. Dr. George?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First of all, let me thank the Auditor General because his help along this process has been extraordinary. As it pointed out, the receivership started, June 17th or so. Our team from Montgomery County Intermediate Unit entered on July 1. But we had a roadmap because we came in not knowing a whole lot other than what we see in the media. But the one thing we could go to is the past work of the Auditor General's office to give us guidance of where to begin. And that's exactly what we did. So it's very clear where we needed to focus our energies. So thank you for that work. And since we've been there, we've been in communication with the Auditor General, and the same guidance is still there. So we're very appreciative of his work. And it's been pointed out, these are some significant accomplishments that he highlighted in its early time being. But while significant as they are, they're stepping stones. There's so much more work yet to do. And let's not lose sight of what the big issue is. The big issue here is to make sure there's a quality education program for every child in the Harrisburg School District. That's where we'll keep the eye on the ball. That's where we want to go. But to get there, there's so much financial and infrastructure work that has to be done first. And with the work of the Auditor General and the continuous support that we're going to have moving forward, we will get there. There's budget work to do. There's lots of other deficiencies and dysfunction that needs to be addressed and corrected. And as has been pointed out, it is long work. It will take years, but it will be done. It will be done. So we look forward to continue working with the department. And I also want to take a moment and say, give a compliment to the Department of Education, because they too have been a very strong partner with us along this way. Lots of work in the federal programs area, lots of work in the certification area, and their offices have been very supportive of us going along. So the Pennsylvania government is hard at work and working with the Harrisburg School District to make sure that, again, all those children in the community have access to a quality education. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. George. And I just want to, sort of loop this up before we take any questions is what happened in Reading can happen here, which is building cooperation between the parents, the teachers, the students, the business leaders, and the community. And that's why I'm so pleased that Dr. George, along with Dr. Samuels, are both part of this process, because I believe they have the right approach to this. There's going to be some bumps, but I'm looking forward to working with Dr. Samuels, Dr. George, and the rest of the team, as including, as Dr. George said, the Department of Education, as we work to try to make sure that every student in Harrisburg has an equal opportunity. So with that, happy to take any questions.
Auditor General DePasquale, you said you guys don't know much about those new developments that are happening, but do you think that the FBI investigation will conflict or alter your real-time audit?
No, I don't believe it will. There have been instances in the past, and I want to be clear, it's not happened at any point with this yet, but I pointed out just because I try to be, fully out there with information, where sometimes law enforcement has told us, please don't look in this box, proverbial box, because that is under criminal investigation. And that happens usually through just a professional discussion between the two agencies. And then we know not to go there because we don't want to potentially disrupt evidence. None of that has happened to date at this point. Usually it happens the other way because we're looking at records that maybe someone else has been looking at, and then we share everything we find.
Dr. George, what's your reaction to the district being investigated by the FBI?
I think that our concern has always been to what can we do to get our academic and financial house in order. So there's a lot of work to do that. But to the point that there are others looking at individuals who may have worked to put the situation where we are today, that's up to them. We will continue to cooperate with them, but our team's focus is rebuilding. Their focus is trying to hold those accountable who may be responsible for the plight of the school district. So we will continue to cooperate as requested.
And sort of similar to the Scranton School District, we went in, did an audit, found a horrible bus contract, other what were at least potentially criminal issues, handed off to Attorney General Shapiro. They started their investigation, and just this past week, there was a guilty plea as a result of that, and there may be more to come. The professionals in the district need to keep running the school district because for the kids, the principals, the teachers, the work continues. And so we can all, in a sense, walk and chew gum at the same time, which is holding people that may have committed bad acts accountable, while at the same time making sure that the teachers and the administration and the students are going about their day.
In your review so far, have you found that the leadership committed irresponsible acts, or there might be evidence of crimes committed?
I wouldn't want to speak on a potentially criminal issue yet, because even if I think something may be, that's up to other people to say that, because people have rights in the criminal process when it comes to potential jail time. So I want to be clear, I never comment on, if we see something potential, we hand it over. I don't mean to be flip about this. The school district was taken over by the state. So the reality is there was a whole host of irresponsible decisions over a number of years to get us here. It's almost impossible to have a state takeover. So I think just the very nature of having that makes it, in a sense, automatic that people were acting irresponsibly.
Can you say whether or not you provided information to law enforcement?
We have not done that at this point. But that's not because we've found nothing that would lead us to believe that that was something. But once we are done with the full report, we will share it. So there may be something in between that we share.
So there's nothing so far that...
Correct.
Okay.
But no matter what happens with the audit, whether that anything in the in-between happens, this report will be shared with the Attorney General's office and the FBI and probably the Middle District U.S. Attorney's office as well, because if the FBI is involved, they may or may not be. Again, I don't want to make it seem like I know this, but they may have at least some knowledge of that, because sometimes there are things that they are investigating, and I'm only saying sometimes, and they haven't even looked at the financials yet, and sometimes our information gives them other avenues to pursue.
I was wondering if you could offer some more detail on these bullet points in the news release that you went over. I mean, what proof have you found that the district has implemented, is monitoring the leave time close? I mean, can you just elaborate on these points?
Yeah, look, they've walked us through how they're I mean, some of this is paperwork. You're forcing people to submit paperwork, and you're documenting in the computer, and they've shown us how they're doing that. And then on the travel side of it, that was a change in policy, where instead of giving people in advance ahead of travel, which quite frankly is insane, now requiring receipts and documentation and then getting reimbursed. So those two things we've seen simply from a paperwork and a computer trail.
So they were doing none of that before?
I'm not going to say none of it because they were clearly paying people, so that part of it was happening. They just weren't doing the documentation side of it.
Were those the main issues that you found in your review so far, the things that you're recommending?
Yeah, that's the first wave of it, but there's going to be a long way to go.
So it essentially has just been a look at, going forward from what this new team is doing.
Right.
That's what your audit is focused on, not so much what the FBI and Attorney General.
Well, yeah, I want to be, I'll state it again. I have no idea what the FBI is or isn't looking at, or the Attorney General is or isn't looking at. And even if I did know, I would say I don't know. But I mean, I truly don't know. But I'd be foolish to comment on that either way. But we're focused on the areas that we traditionally look at in an audit and what the Department of Education found in their audit. Those are our primary focuses, and then from there, we may have other avenues to pursue.
And can you elaborate on the next phase of what you're going to be looking at specifically going forward?
The next phase is specifically focused on the Department of Education findings.
Not anything particular in them?
No, that we'll be reviewing each of their findings.
Also have a question for you, Auditor General. This is on the Northern Lebanon School District. You said there was findings of inaccurate reports that resulted in nearly $90,000 in overpayment. Can you talk about that?
It kind of speaks for itself, but yes, first of all, there were many members of the community that were concerned about some issues in the district. We actually got some Facebook requests, so that's why we went in and sped up our timeline on doing the Northern Lebanon audit. And look, there was kind of the expenses didn't match up the receipts, so we saw overbilling.
I know you said this process may take years. Is there any short-term timeline that families could look forward to? Maybe in the next few months they'll learn about your next step, or
Well, I do know, look, I think the new administration is getting a grip on the expenses. I think the thing that we're trying to eliminate at the beginning is the stuff that's the low-hanging fruit of making sure the money's being spent right, making sure the contracting is going right. I think that's some of the other longer-term issues, they're going to simply take time. But I think what we're trying to focus on here is making sure the administration is running smoothly.
How much of a focus of your office's work is on this particular audit? How many auditors are involved? And
We have a team of 3.
are they basically living in the district office?
Well, they don't have cots in there. They have their own home residence that they are allowed to go to every night. But yes, this is their primary. There are our school audit bureau team, and they're one of our higher end teams, although they're all, obviously everyone in that bureau is obviously high end because it's such a critical function of our department. But yes, it's 3 auditors from that bureau, and this is their primary audit, because sometimes we may have auditors working on many different school audits, and they probably have some other duties as well, but this is their primary role.
Have they run into the problem that the district officials have with the missing documents and their work of trying to make sure everything's, working appropriately now?
The team is prepared for all challenges.
Can you elaborate on that?
The team is prepared for all challenges. Any other questions? If not, everyone, thank you for your time and have a great weekend.
Thank you.